Nick.
Hi, Carl.
Hey, Nick. So I disagree.
I thought you were going to say that, and I actually disagreed before you disagreed, which is a really nice coincidence.
You pre-disagreed. Folks,
Yeah,
today we have a new show, and we're calling it Agency MythBusters.
Oh, I thought we were doing it together. Sorry.
MythBusters. MythBusters Agency Edition.
Agency edition.
Special Agency. 2 minutes ago you said you didn't care.
I know, but I
Just
got
whatever you want it to be. Damn it.
excited.
So we've got a new show for you called MythBusters Agency Edition. And Nick and I are going to go deep on different topics where he has done some research.
It's been good research, Carl. Put the air quotes away.
They're good researches, Brent. And I'm going to talk about the conversations I've had and things that I've seen in my years.
Like you, little of both. You need some data and you need some experiences. It's good to have.
Yeah, you know what? What's a bunch of data without real world experience?
Exactly.
And folks, before this show started, I need to let you know that my chair broke. We were getting ready to record, and before I could even log in, my chair sprawled me on the ground. Today's episode is on scaling. Nick, is it possible to scale a digital agency?
No, not it, like in the traditional sense. No, absolutely not.
Really?
Infuriates me because I see so many posts and so many articles and thought pieces saying, scale your agency to $10 billion in 2 months, buy my course. And it's the most nonsense stuff I've ever seen.
Or the people who say, I scaled my revenue 1,000%. How much were you making? I get that you feel better about yourself because you didn't say you were only making $100 a week. Actually, that'd be pretty dope to go up 1,000% on that. Nick, define scaling for me because I'm confused. I'm kind of on the other side of this.
It sounds pedantic, but the terms we use matter because when we're talking to somebody who knows something about scaling or something about the terms, they will interpret your words and your communication differently based on, what their interpretation of the word scaling is. So we'll just level set right off the bat. Scaling is what software companies do. Scaling is when you can spread more revenue over a fixed cost base. And so every new dollar of revenue earns a higher margin than the dollar before. So you can grow like crazy and not be scaling. Those are two totally different things.
So you're saying that word has a specific definition?
Yes, absolutely.
Crazy.
Absolutely.
So that's the end of the episode? No.
I think we're done.
Because I think maybe they can.
I would love to hear it. I'm legitimately interested.
But I wonder if they should. And I'm a contrarian by nature. So when you said that didn't think it, I had to jump on that other side. But regardless, for me, I think scaling is possible for an agency. But maybe in your definition, you're no longer an agency because if you're going to scale, you have to think about things like productizing services. Now, can you productize a creative service where more and more people use it, but you don't have to do more and more work?
AI might change the game on that.
AI and real automation,
maybe
may allow you to have that. But let's back up for a second. Why would you want to scale?
Oh, it's super attractive.
Thank you.
It's super attractive.
We're recording.
Machine.
It's inappropriate, but thank you.
I'm just gonna be fully appropriate here. It's very attractive to scale because the idea that your margin can grow as you get bigger is amazing. That's like, let's just go grow at all costs then, and the margin will figure itself out down the road. That's why you have VCs pumping hundreds of millions of dollars, billions of dollars into startups that don't earn a margin for 20 years, 15 years. They don't need to. They know that will come later once they get the actual numbers large enough and they can access economies of scale.
Now you're using the word again.
Trying.
So scaling is super attractive if your main focus is profit. And I know a lot of people just quit listening.
Right.
But there's a challenge. Okay, so definition, right? Possible to grow profitably is also a challenge because you hit these key points and your culture is going to shift. and you're not going to be working at the place you thought you started.
Where do you see that first happening?
For me, and I hold on to this, I think some people would say it's once you cross 15 people. I think it's once you cross 20 people, but I do think it is based on a number of individuals. Because once you get into that low 20s, you have people who've been with you from the beginning who lose their faith in what it is you're doing. They're like starting to see quality challenges, delivery challenges, culture challenges. Clients are unhappy because you're in this growth mode, especially if you've got this mindset of scaling, right? Where you're thinking, I should be able to do more with the same amount. Look, I listened.
That's it. That's it.
I listened and I learned.
You did, and you nailed it. If you go into this with a scaling mindset, with the idea that you will earn margin later and it'll be more than the margin you can earn now, you will make decisions that are incorrect for an agency because the underlying math doesn't math out. The calculus is different.
Okay, so let's look at myths within the myth. See, this is where I think there's this promised land of scaling. There's this promised land of getting to a certain size. You're going to lose a lot. You're going to have to be okay with that if you're really going to do it. But there is this thought that you get to a certain size, north of 50, probably north of 100, where you have operational efficiencies.
Maybe not operational efficiencies, but operational distance. You're not the one responsible for various operational things. That distance is it. You're doing other. You're on a boat. Someone else is dealing with SOPs.
So operational efficiencies, though, is that realistic? Because I think it might even go the other way. I think sometimes reducing the size of your company is going to be a lot more profitable, or at least
Oh
sustainable.
yes, we see that in the data. I mean, I can look at. We do a benchmarking thing. We used to. I got too
Very
busy.
important.
We would break it out by size of company, and so you would see as you got a large, like more FTEs, your gross margin goes down. Your net margin goes down. Like it's less profitable to be bigger. And that's the opposite of scaling. Like that, again, back to the front.
It is a glam metric. It is just like I have a company of 500 people, but I don't know what to do now. Because I'm making less than I made at 16 people. I'm not saying that's necessarily true. They're probably making more, but the risk is so much higher. And the demands emotionally, right? Depending on who you are, depending on who you are. For some people, this is a business. These people are in my business. Oh, that didn't sound good. And you can roll that way. But for me, and this doesn't make me better or whatever, the largest I ever got engine was to just under 50 people. I was miserable.
Why? What about it was though? Like, what was the frustrating
I
piece?
will say, and I think this becomes part of it, right? I didn't know everybody's name. I met somebody in a hallway once at a conference who introduced themselves to me, and I asked them where we met, and they said, I work for you. And we weren't even 50 people. I'm supposed to be able to remember 50. I'm so sorry, Caleb. If you see this, I'm so sorry, dude. But I also think that we have this weird belief that we get to a certain size and we'll also have brand recognition. And we'll also have clients who want to say yes because they see the amazingness that we've created. I could tell you 3 agencies that are over 500 people and throw in a bogus one. I don't think you could pick out the bogus one. We're not talking about soft drinks, right? We're not talking about something where, you know, everybody kind of knows. And I think that's one of those things. I think what happens, and you like just blew this episode out of the water in a good way
Oh, okay. I thought I
by
read the first one.
the whole scaling definition. I do think we may find their ways with AI or automating, but everybody's going to do it, or at least the people who make it through. Right on the other side
That's a future episode.
on the other side of this transition, right? It's like, I mean, they're going to be the people who did it and the people who didn't, and the people who are solo flyers that are just getting plugged into things. What an owner does is they think, okay, I've been running at 12 forever. And I need more people so I can do more things. And then more things, more money. Now, I think some people actually look to do this so they can reward their team.
Oh, for
I
sure.
think there are a lot of people culturally that they're like, I need a place for my team to grow.
You know what I hear most often? They want stability. Like the ones that I work with, and maybe it's my messaging, maybe like that's what I'm putting out in the world, so that's what I'm getting back. Almost all of the agency leaders that I do strategy work for, one of their top things is they want a more stable environment to work in so they don't have to ever think about a layoff. They don't ever have to think about reducing like salaries or, not giving bonuses some year. That idea of rewarding a team that's getting you there, That is huge. That is very prevalent, at least in the groups that I'm seeing.
It's a retention opportunity too, because they have all this new places to go and all this kind of stuff. But I think the increased stability is bullshit because I will say for me, okay, the way I did it was like other people are a lot smarter at this stuff. Other people have read books that I haven't read, all this kind of shit, whatever. I just think it gets to this point where you have one big opportunity and you land it. For us, it was a billionaire client who was ready to spend a couple of 100,000 a month. And I kept telling myself, I'm going to grow new clients like this around him. But the reality was,
Yep.
I didn't know where he
Yep.
came from. I didn't find him, he found me.
Hmm.
He found us. I think when you have one monster client and then you think, I'm going to get a lot more of these, I don't think it works that way. I don't think people do it. Another way to look at it, and again, this isn't scaling, but through acquisition. I think you agree. We're getting ready to go into a huge M&A season.
I think it's going to be interesting. You're going to see rates drop, and people need to do something with that capital. I don't know if it's going to rival that kind of free money era of like
Mm-hmm.
2021, but I think it's going to be a heck of a lot more than it is now.
See, I think the difference between 2021 and this, 2021, there were a lot of people who weren't sure what was happening with their company. And they suddenly had this extra money from the government and they were like, "Oh, okay." Right? And then you had other people who were like, they got a lot more money and they didn't necessarily need it. And so yeah, they were looking to they were looking to acquire. But I think going into next year, we have so many shops that feel like they are just barely hanging on. They feel way behind the AI curve, the automation curve as well. These are two different curves, right? They are exhausted and they don't know if it's going to get any better. Then you have your VCs and you got your big, gigantic holding companies that now, with Trump coming in, the thought is money's going to get cheaper, right? It's a very short term mentality. And now that's why I think that's going to happen. But again, it's not scaling, it's growth.
Well, look, I mean, even at the top, the very top, what's that? IPG and somebody else.
Publicis. Oh, yeah, yeah. I know what you're talking about.
And they were saying, I was digging into it a little bit, and they were saying that the cost savings are like 700 to 800 million a year. If you're the largest, two of the largest in the world, you should be saving a lot more if scaling's a thing. Like if you're really getting some kind of cost effectiveness from economies of scale, it should be way higher than that. Like looking at that, my thinking is, well, they're going to have an AI savings, right? This is a layoff without having to call it a layoff. And then there's probably a bunch of redundant back office stuff, right? Like how many attorney salaries, how many like accountant salaries can they cut to get those savings? And I think that that's going to be a large portion of it.
So that kind of gets back to the operational efficiencies thing in a way, because the one thing you don't need to expand as much is maybe your finance team, maybe your legal team.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, you are going to have additional costs because now you got to have a talent acquisition team that you didn't have before because the churn is going to be crazy because people see this as a job, not as a
Yeah.
career,
Oh my God, it's huge.
right? And they have no loyalty to whoever just bought them, right? So those things are going to get a little weird. But there's another thing here. We look at this kind of operational efficiencies. I think I could see it there with what you're saying.
I mean, you'll get better. Like right, like let's put it this way: you have to look at the goal for growth. So if the goal can't be scale, if it can't be like you're going to earn more margin for every dollar later, if that's not the goal, and it can't be the goal, you have to look at why the heck you're doing it. If I'm, CEO of IPG, my salary and compensation are based on the size of my firm. So hell yeah, I'm gonna try to double the size of my firm. I'm gonna go make tens of millions of dollars more because my firm's double the size. If you look at it through that lens from the very large group, it's not operational efficiency driving this, it's personal stuff that makes sense. Because at the lower end, when we talk about, almost like acqui-hires, I see a lot of activity around the small tuck-ins of like 10, 15 employee shops. That's still driven by personal stuff, but it's a different thing. They want to add into they want to make their life easier because they add on another service line or they get into a niche market by buying somebody else. Those are valid reasons. This idea of just get bigger to get bigger, it exists. You can do it, but you're not going to get any kind of massive growth curve out of it.
Right. And so I like what you were dipping your toes into the outsourcing kind of concept there. And that's something we saw a lot of smaller shops start to do.
Mm-hmm.
Now, the challenge with that is there's something out of your control, which is the cost of that outsourcing. Feels like the world is leveling up.
It
Okay.
is. It absolutely is. Well, because people were doing this before COVID, right? Like, how many shops did you know? Like, percentage obviously was like way lower, but there were a ton of shops that were doing near shore, offshore
I love
talent.
we call it nearshore, so we feel ethically better. It's fine. Work with humans.
We do. We do. It's closer. It's closer
Yeah.
exploitation. That makes it okay.
Domestic outsourcing is my favorite. Well, I don't have to actually hit the water at any point. Outsource to the south or the north, and we'll call it a day. So, one thing we did, and I never thought of it as scaling, but it's almost like upselling. Upselling into a monthly fee, upselling into something, I'll keep it simple, like hosting, so that every client you ever get ends up paying you a certain amount of money for years after you're done working with them. But it's not fast enough. I mean, you're adding $10,000, $20,000 a year, maybe. I mean, I don't know who you are. I don't know what you're doing, but that doesn't really feel like it's going to work.
I mean, that's a way to grow. Like, you could viably grow a business off of that. You will grow faster if you throw in a good amount of project work in there, but you can grow just off retainers as long as your churn's not crazy.
Well, and retainers can be project work too. We don't need to get into all that, but it's a later discussion.
A later discussion.
This gets back to the niching down, because like you look at some of the stuff that David Baker talks about, and you know how important it is to be very well positioned.
It is. I'm going to go out and just say
I
I
do
agree
too.
wholeheartedly with that.
I do think generalists can sustain possibly longer, but not thrive
Maybe.
and not hit the same metrics financially,
No, they can't.
because they're feeding the beast with whatever they can find, and they never quite get. Now, some of them are great. I mean, don't get me wrong. And all of this is not to say, I mean, this is the whole Rob, your mileage may vary thing, right? But when you really niche down on something and not a vertical, because I can't tell you how many people I know in the healthcare space, how many people I know in the higher ed space, how many people I know in those categories that made it through that first round of the pandemic. I still don't know a ton of hospitality folks that are like building a bunch of shit for hospitality. But I just think about that, because if you niche down into specific services, specific focus on specific clients, and then you can become the best at that, then that's a way to scale.
Yeah.
Because if you're known as the best,
No, you can't. Maybe if you are like the absolute best.
I mean, the guys who redesigned Microsoft, they redesigned Microsoft.com. It's 3 guys. I don't think they charged them 10 grand for the redesign.
I get that. I think the idea that you can charge an infinite amount, the number can keep going up regardless of how much value your projects actually deliver. Like, there's a hard limit on that. You can't deliver infinite value, so you can't charge infinite value.
Do you know how much Burger King paid for their last logo redesign? $8 million.
No.
They basically put a bubble effect on the existing logo.
Genius.
So I'm just saying,
Genius.
yeah, okay, maybe these are odd outcasts kind of things, outlier things.
But it's not $80 million. It's not, well, with inflation, maybe it'll get there, but not yet. We also live in a world where price transparency is a real thing. And I talk to this to clients about this sometimes, where their clients usually have more visibility into the average pricing level for a service than my client does. If you look at like just the number of proposals they're getting, the number of pitches they're getting, the different ways they see this problem being tackled, they're getting price data from the market. You can dial in your positioning to a certain extent. There's a good enough line. So if you're charging Burger King 80 million for a logo, we're trying to charge them, and somebody comes in at 8 million and it looks like they can probably do the job, they're going to save that 10x.
Ooh, I like how you threw the 10x out there. Maybe you can help me grow my profit. You want to throw a little something on your LinkedIn there?
Maybe.
As I think about this now, it's like, yeah, okay, you got me. I agree. You can't scale an agency. Success. I think there are ways to grow. I think there are ways to grow in a healthy way, but I think this understanding what the word initially meant, and this is classic creative digital agency, and that we see somebody else do something and we're like, we'll do that, right? Like when Google had the 20% rule and Fridays were off, and we were like, well, I'll do that. We don't have recurring revenue from advertising. What we've done is cut our revenue potential down by 20%. At the same time, we're trying to do yoga in the office because they're doing that shit. I mean, come on, man.
No, that's 100% it. That's 100%. That is, you just perfectly distilled that. Like, the decisions you will try to make if you think you can scale are very different than if you know that's not a real thing.
So if you know it's not a real thing, but you want to grow, then I think, and define grow. Is it headcount? Is it revenue? Is it profit?
Either or. Headcount or revenue. Those two can be looked at similarly.
What I see people do that works well is partnering. I mean, partnering between two agencies, it's a beautiful thing. Sometimes it's where little babies come from.
Little baby agencies.
Little baby agencies, I've seen it. But I think that the challenge becomes do it that way, right? You got the partnerships, you got the automation side of it. Not everybody's gonna be doing that. We're not everybody. The ones of us that are hanging out a year from now, 2 years from now. But I guess one of the things, like I see agencies do this all the time. They decide they're going to grow. Then there's a cash flow challenge because growth costs. Then there's a culture impact because people get upset. Then there's a systems problems and clients are upset and you're not getting paid and you're having a cash flow problem and people are leaving and all these things. And then they're like, fuck it, I'm just going to go small again. Just come back up. They can't always get back.
There's a retrench.
Sometimes the risk has gone so far out there that they can't get back. I mean, they can get smaller, but they've still got to deal with all these mistakes. And I'm going to call them mistakes because we made decisions based on not understanding the definition of a word. Where were you, Nick? These people needed you.
If you find me in the woods, I'll give you some wisdom. And that's
Whoa.
how this has to work.
Whoa.
When people do that and they go through that kind of like transition from maybe they got up to 75 employees or 100 employees and then they had to dip back down to 50 or 45, the employees that are still there, there's scar tissue from that. There's fear. There's like, we always know that's in the back of, the realm of possibilities. That alone, that culture shift, it's not always super apparent, but that can really nerf your ability to get back up into that 75 100 employee range.
Right, because you're dealing with folks who are looking for a lifeboat while you're trying to find where you're
Yeah,
headed.
exactly. They get cynical too. They get super cynical.
And they're all good people. You didn't hire crappy people.
Oh no, yeah, no, they're not bad people. They've just been through it. they went through it.
2 steps forward, 1 step back. That 1 step back, you're right. It is scar tissue. It is survivor's remorse. It's all those things. But also, they feel betrayed. They feel like I thought we were doing something and I didn't know that this was an option.
Right, because usually they buy into it, right? Like they buy into the leadership, they buy into the idea,
Yeah,
the
people,
vision.
they leave bad managers and they follow good leaders. And good leaders make hard decisions and how they manage it and how they get through it. So that'll be a whole nother episode.
Tune in next week.
Hopefully not one that's relevant anytime soon. Not anytime soon. My final thing that I would say is growth can be great. And we all have different goals. So if your goal is to grow something to a certain size and sell it, totally different than somebody else's goal, which is to create a really wonderful place that they can sustain themselves and their family on it, but they like it and they don't see it as something, they're the never sells. But then you've also got, I think this is kind of where I was, which was kind of that organic, if it happens, it happens, we'll build around it, but it's that slow growth kind of concept. There's no slow scaling. You never see anybody say, I'll get you to 5X in 2 years. Although I believe that person a little more.
Yeah, because that's probably just regular growth.
Like we had a not great year at the Bureau, but when I go back and look at it, the revenue anyway is going to grow about 14%. It felt like we were treading water.
Yeah.
But regardless of all that, I think I would love to ask you, when should people running an agency, and I know you've never run one,
Never. Don't take my advice.
but you've done a little bit of research, a touch,
Yeah, a little bit. 10 years, almost a decade now.
a decade, and the only thing you know is the definition of the word scale. Cool.
You know what? Nobody knew it before me.
Nobody.
Nobody knew
Everybody
before me.
thought we were going up a wall. They didn't know. Like, where's Nick? Help us out. What options do you think people have if you're running an agency and you need more profit?
You need more profit.
I mean, raise your prices. We've done that one.
Yeah. Call up David Baker, get some better positioning, raise your prices, and that usually solves profit challenges. Like, let's put it this way: I've seen a bunch of people talk about like, here's the math of what you got to do to figure out your ideal margin, and then build that into your price. And like, if you're running like a factory ass shop, fine, do it. But like, I don't want to deal with that shit. Like,
I've
just
met founders.
just fix pricing. All you got to do is fix pricing, and then you can manage the margin through utilization rates, and then you're fine. You're Gucci. Don't worry about it.
Another one, get to a point where you can hire a CEO, get to a point where you can hire whatever people are calling them now,
Yeah.
right? Like for a while it was general manager.
Dude, even a COO, a quality COO that you can bring on around 45, 55 employees, like that'll crush. It's hard to find. Like, don't get me wrong.
Yeah.
That's not an easy role to fill, but if you could find that, grab that.
So forget about scaling.
Yeah, don't worry about scaling. Worry about growing. Yeah. You want to get bigger, do your thing.
And you know what? If you're still here after the past 4 years, just take a breath too. You've done well.
Yeah, also that.
Nick, I like our show.
I do
I
too.
like our
It was a good
show.
first
I'm
episode.
going to dedicate it to Sherlock. He's watching from up there
Oh,
going,
that's
are
a
you going
better
to
one.
eat that poop? Because I was going to eat it. And with that,
That's a great sign off.
well, it does
Always
kind of
great
relate to
talking to you,
scaling
buddy.
though. Are you going to eat that poop?
Yeah, because later you're gonna eat
Exactly.
shit.
You can do it today or tomorrow, or you can do it up in dog heaven.
It's
But
gonna
if
happen.
you try to do this, you're probably going to end up eating shit because, as Nick has taught us,
Oh,
it ain't really a thing.
it's not a thing.
All right, my brother.
Data don't lie.
We'll be back for another episode, everybody. Thanks for checking us out. And yeah, send this off to Will. See if he doesn't goof it up a little bit.
Love it. Love it.